Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about culture and why it's important and how to shape it. If you've been here a few times now, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment something you've learned in today's video. Now let's get into it. Something that I have been seeing more and more recently is that most business owners have values on their website, but no values in their company. For example, their website could say that they practice innovation, honesty, teamwork, and communication, which looks great on their website, but what is the reality of that? And the reality is, internally, they are shutting down new ideas, encouraging people to lie about performance, pitting people against each other, and barely communicating at all. And remember, culture isn't what you preach, it's what you practice every single day. And a lot of these companies I see are not practicing their values on a regular basis. And another thing to remember is that if your team needs rules for everything, that's not a symptom of the right culture, not being in place and missing values. And today we're going to fix that because real culture doesn't need constant babysitting. It runs itself when it runs on values. So think of your company like a phone. So the apps, sales, marketing, operations, they're what people see, but values, they're in the operating system. The part you don't see, but if it breaks, everything breaks. And most founders try to solve behavior problems with rules, but here's the truth. Rules are strict and values empower. So here's an example of this. Behavior problem. People avoid ownership or make excuses. Founder response. Let's add another checklist so that every task is signed off and tracked. Values-based fix is we act like owners, not renters. So you're teaching them to bring problems and solutions at the same time. So share a weekly ownership win in your meetings. When your team knows what you stand for, they can make high integrity aligned decisions, even when you're not in the room. So let's say one of your core values is extreme ownership. You're not just saying it, you're hiring for it, you're modeling it, and you're rewarding for it. And suddenly your team stops pointing fingers and they start to solve problems by themselves. That's a culture in motion, and it starts with clarity. So most company values are just corporate wallpaper. Words like integrity, excellence sounds nice, but they don't mean anything without definition. So a real value is a behavior that you can see. So here's the difference. Integrity, what does that even mean? We finish what we start. We outcare the competition. We lead ourselves before we lead others. These are values with a pulse. Values that you can hire, fire, and promote by. So how do you create yours? Think about the people on your team that you wish you could clone. What do they do consistently? Not what they believe, but how do they actually act? Your values are already there. You just haven't named them yet. So here's how you bring your values into life for key areas. So when you start to think about all of this, keep in mind a value that you never mention is a value that doesn't matter. So if you want a culture to scale, for example, you need repetition, you need integration, and you need leadership. So here's how you bring your values to life in 4 key areas. Number 1, hiring. Don't just interview for skills, interview for values and alignment, and ask, tell me about a time you made a decision that cost you, but it was the right thing to do. And number 2, onboarding. Share real stories, not your mission statement. Show them what values look like in action. Number 3, meetings. Start or end with a values moment. Celebrate someone who lived your values, or gently just call out a gap. Number 4, accountability. Values are your compass. When you correct behavior, don't scold, just point to the standard. Now, you're not the bad guy, the culture is. So here's the hard truth. If your team isn't living the values, look at yourself first. Culture is a mirror, and the team reflects the leader. So if you want to shift your culture, it all starts by embodying the values yourself. The more often your team sees and hears those values in action, the faster they become the norm. Repetition creates culture, not posters, not slogans, only practice. For example, one of the values in my company that matters to me the most is family. For example, guys, I had a guy one time that I hired, one of the executives in my company, and he looked great on paper. He had the skill sets, he had the resume, had some experience, great personality, great sales guy. People tend to like him, but he was missing that one thing and that value of family. And this came to light one day when he actually missed his kid's birthday. And I started to think really hard about that of like who I've got actually running my company doesn't value family. So I had to make the hard decision at that time to let this guy go because he did not represent one of the most important values in my entire life. And another example of one of my core values that's super important to me is extreme ownership. And I see a lot of business owners, employees, leaders, executives that every time there's a problem or situation or they lose a client that they're always wanting to point the finger to someone else. And what you have to realize is everything falls on the owner of the business. And so you have to take ownership ownership for yourself and for your team, and you have to push that down to your team so they understand the real value in that. So when we lost a customer that was made up 40% of my revenue, $12 million client, like that taught me a big lesson in accountability, because I was responsible for that account being lost. And I was also accountable for holding so much revenue in my company. And the lesson learned out of that is now going forward is we don't allow a client to be more than 25% of our business, so that if something happens, we're not putting our business at jeopardy and we're not putting team members at jeopardy. Because unfortunately in this situation, we had to let go of a lot of people because the account was so large, and we probably had 20 people that ran this account. So and I don't look at it as why did this happen to me? It's the lesson that I've learned from this, which again is don't let one customer dominate more than 25% of your revenue. This will protect you and your team members from something crazy happening in your business. And sometimes you got to recognize when things like this happen and you lose a customer or a client, or something bad happens in your business, you as the owner have to take this opportunity to figure out, why is this happening to me? What gaps are in my business? What holes are there? Really audit what you're doing as a leader with yourself and your team, because again, losing a client of that magnitude, it was tough. It was a hard pill to swallow, and it set us back, a year. And now we've just now started to recoup other clients to replace that level of income. But so you really just got to pay attention when things like this happen, and you got to be looking out for this ahead of time. And like I said, the shift that we make now with no one being more than 25% of our business, now this is a standard. Like now it's not going to happen again because of the lesson that I've learned from this. And it's so easy to keep doing the client, having this big contract and focusing on that, and then you lose sight of all the other customers that you have. And then when something happens, you could literally be out of business. As I saw other people that had the same, similar size account, they would be completely out of business, and you lose everything. So guys, going through that situation where we lost the large customer, it really taught us to look deep at ourselves and what we're doing as a company, and really emphasized one of our values of extreme ownership, right? Really taking control of the situation and making sure that now going forward, we put things in place to where this does not happen again and put us in jeopardy. So now it's your turn. Culture change starts with clarity. So let's get practical here. Number one, I want you to write down your top 3 to 5 core values using action-based language. For example, we own every outcome. We don't wait. We take initiative. We follow through, and we hold ourselves accountable. No excuses, no blame. Number 2, we outcare the competition. We go the extra mile. In every touch point, we make people feel seen, heard, and valued, because that's our edge. Number 3, we speak the unspoken. We say what needs to be said with the truth and care. And so sometimes hard conversations have to be had, but this is what builds strong teams. So next, you're going to audit your business. Where are you living those values? Where are you falling short? For example, are you really taking ownership of your mistakes, or are you passing blame to your team or the economy or your competition? So next, guys, you're going to add value moments to your meetings this week. You're going to celebrate someone who lived with one of your values. This is a great practice to incorporate anyways. It's always good to celebrate your wins. It actually keeps the morale high and helps encourage your team. Next, we're going to pick one value to reinforce. Share a story, record a loom, or send an email to your team. This could even be a weekly PDF sent to anyone explaining the core value to focus on for that week. It doesn't have to be anything grand. This is actually how culture is shifted, not with a bang, but with constant small signals of who you are and who you refuse to be. So if you want a business that runs without you, you need a culture that thinks like you. Values aren't a plaque on the wall. They're the pulse of your business. So make them real, make them loud, and live them every day. If you've enjoyed today's video, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with someone on your team. Go ahead and check out the description for some free resources below, and I will see you in the next video.